Now then, so it's that time again. We've had another patch, and in general, pretty good. They targeted a lot of the cards that I think needed targeting, or the strategies that needed targeting. So some of the Nilfgaard ball interactions and line pockets in particular, I was really happy with, and got a fresh set of decks for you. So just got to get that preface in there just before anyone misunderstands the point of this video. These are going to be a deck for each faction that I will be looking to use this season quite a bit. Obviously, this is not a sort of meta snapshot. This isn't like these are the best decks for each faction. So I encourage you to try them out for yourself, make any changes you think are going to work. These are just sort of things I'm going to try, and it's really there for ideas for you all. For if you're really struggling for things to play, especially if you're just going to pro rank and you're looking for something for a faction. So yeah, take these all with a pinch of salt. It's not set in stone that these are the best. So yeah, keep that one in mind. Quickly say that I think the meta is going to be relatively different after the changes, and I think we're going to see quite a bit of Vi after the change to Cast Scroll. So when you're doing your deck building and things like that, keep in mind you're probably going to see a little bit of Vi. I think that's going to see a bit of a resurgence. But I won't ramble on too long because we've got 6 decks to cover. I don't want to talk about all of those, so I'll go straight into those. Alright, so first up we have the Death Wish list. So I was using this in my last video. As always, I will have links to deck lists and guides below, so there'll be a link to using this list. And the only change is Arcaspore for Foglet, and the reason for that is Arcaspore is basically doing what Foglet used to do. They've just switched around what card does what and that sort of thing. But the general idea of this list is we're going for a relatively control heavy kind of monsters list where we're really looking to get a lot of value from cards like Maruna and Imperial Manticore through the use of Weaver's Incantation. So if you can get Weaver's Incantation to stick, and you can get, double triggers on Maruna, double triggers on Manticore, double triggers on Werecat, that sort of thing, you really see the points rack up. And I've had a fair bit of success with this list. It does pretty well if your opponent is lacking ways to deal with Weavers. So Cave Troll's pretty nice in that it gives you that protection for the Weavers Incantation and Haunt, but obviously still susceptible to sort of things like Crathy Heatwave. So you just have to keep that in mind. It is 5 power, so it's relatively easy to remove. So it can get a little scary if you're putting it on the board without a Cave Troll. Now, I'm generally pretty happy because Maruna got a very slight buff of like 1 point, so can't complain. It's 1 extra point. And yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say about this list. It feels really consistent, and I just really enjoy playing it. And with the change to Iron of Shadows, it gives you a little more flexibility. If you want to use, say, Manticore in round 1, or like Maruna if there's a pretty good target, like a Madoc or Flying Redanian, something you want to remove for carryover, you have that option. In general, you're probably not going to do that, but the option is open to you, which is always nice. It's always nice. And it does also give you the option to basically double Pred Dive with Manticore. So if your opponent plays 2 cards that are relatively tall straight away, you can play Manticore, use End of Shadows on it, kill that, use a leader charge, kill the other one. And it's pretty fun. Pretty fun. So yeah, I definitely advocate for trying out this list. I really, really enjoy using this list. I think there's probably ways you could change this. If you wanted to change the Crones package, I personally like it because Ruess is a consume, and Whispers and Weavers are very solid options in round 2 and round 3. But I think if you were looking for changes to make, that would definitely be the sort of area you're looking at. Say if you wanted to get like a Goliath or something in there, I don't know. You could go for something like that. So yeah, the options are there. Alright, so for Nilfgaard, we're trying out soldiers. So you may have seen with the new patch and everything like that, they made a few changes to soldiers, try and help out that archetype for Nilfgaard, give it options beyond just slamming aristocrats or cloggers, and it looks quite interesting. I just want to kind of say this list was very much like my first stab at it. I played like 1 game with this so far, so I don't really have enough information to go on whether this is the most optimal list. I think if you're going to try this, you definitely want to see how it goes, maybe make some changes, make improvements where you can, that sort of thing. But what we've really got going on is we're trying to play off the really nice buffs that soldiers have got. So the key thing is that Imperial Formation now has like a little passive attached, like how Nature's Gift works, in that when you play a soldier, it gives 1 armor for each adjacent soldier. And so that really, really helps for getting some of your pretty good engines, because you have some pretty good bronze engines. Getting those engines to stick and really be a bit of a threat. And the main ones for this are the crossbowmen. So the problem crossbowmen have always kind of had is because they have 2 armor, it really only takes a very little in terms of damage commitment to turn off a 1.10 engine. But with the new Imperial formation, crossbowmen will require 3 or 4 damage to remove a 1.10 engine's value, which is quite a big investment. Investing 4 points just to turn off 1.10 is quite a fair bit. And because we have Ramon, we can then play crossbowmen that are like borderline not getting removed, and it just feels kind of nice. As I say, I've only played 1 game, but I was really impressed with it. I would say if you are trying this out, definitely keep in mind this doesn't play like the typical Nilfgaard list, in that you're not playing like you would with a ball list. This is very sort of high value from bronze engines kind of list. Something you might be familiar with if you've kind of played like Movement scoia'tael, for example. You're looking to develop these engines and get those points over time, rather than having that explosive power that you get from things like Joachim and like Ball and things like that. So yeah, definitely don't be in the aristocrat kind of mindset when you play this list. But I think it's interesting. I think there's room for changes, but it's definitely an interesting one. Okay, so for Northern Realms, we have a list that I've shown in a couple of videos now. But the only change we've actually made is we're running pincer maneuver, and we've swapped in a siege tower after the recent changes. So siege tower now gets vitality of 4, which is pretty nice. Means it's basically playing as an 8. With crew it can just boost itself by 4 instead. But I switched to pincer maneuver because the downfall of all NR decks, it's super inconsistent if you miss those top end cards, and pincer maneuver kind of fixes that without losing any tempo. You can play it. It spawns volunteers, which is a couple of points. Can't really complain. And really, the difference when it comes to draws between missing that 1 key card and not, you really, really feel it with this list. So it's really nice having that access to different cards without losing diversion, which means we can run things like Carrot Marine and King Bellahoon. But basically, to describe what's going on with this list, we're looking to get value with Siege while also taking advantage of the kind of things that Mobilization is trying to do. This was a Mobilization list before, so we were using like Redanian Archers and Revenants for that kind of thing. I think this is probably a package that we'll consider if we're going to keep it. Maybe we switch out the sort of Revenant kind of stuff and just go with some more consistent cards. That's something I'm probably going to try out. But I've been really, really enjoying using this list, to be honest. Bellahoon's quite underrated, I think, because a 5 for 8, already reasonable, and he really only has to get, 1 or 2 cards boosted for you to get your value from it. And because it's not like the centre of our deck, we really don't care too much if he's removed. But if you can play him, and then you can play something like an Adelia. Adelia gets boosted by 2. She spawns, I don't know, like a Carrot Marine. Carrot Marine gets boosted by 2. Your Bellahoon's played for 9 at that point, and that's only from 1 turn. If he sticks, then you play your Vincent Mice, you play Redanian Archers, you play your Revenants, whatever, and they all get boosted by 2, 3, whatever. And it's really nice if it can stick, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And Siege is kind of an interesting card. I do think it's on the weaker side for scenarios, but I think it has a place in some of our decks. I don't think by any means it's tier 1, but I don't think it's It's bad, but it's not as bad as people think, is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, give this one a try because this has kind of been my go to with Northern Realms for quite a while now. I really enjoy using this list, to be honest. So, yeah, definitely give it a try. Now, for scoia'tael, please stick with me. I know this is a unitless list, but there's some interesting stuff going on. So, this is a list that I came up with a couple of weeks ago, and this was because I've been wanting to try Warraquax outside of like Vi and stuff. Mainly because I think it has a lot of potential in that it really disrupts what your opponent's trying to do, and because of the way the game is set up at the moment with provision costs, taking away your opponent's top provision unit can really mess with their entire like deck's plan. And I think if you have one look at the deck builder and look at the high provision cards, you'll kind of see that. So, you know, things like Keltullis, Lippy, Iced, Harold, Usurper, Cleaver, Jox, you know, the list goes on and on and on. It's got so many good targets. And we're utilising that with Villain Trendmarth. So, because you've probably not seen this card too much on ladder, what it does is after 2 turns, it destroys the highest power unit. And this works really, really nice with Warraquax because that basically at the end of your next turn destroys the tallest unit. So if their top provision unit that was pulled by Warraquax is quite tall, Villain Trendmarth will remove it, no problems. If it's something like an Erden, you know, quite a small unit, then it doesn't really matter too much. You know, the value of pulling that high provision, low power card that really gets its value from deploy means that you've got your value there. You don't really care about killing it once it's pulled out of the deck. And then everything else we're doing is just annoying unitless stuff with Madoc and Saber-Tooth Tiger and a million tall removals. It's pretty obnoxious to play, but I absolutely love it. This is my baby. So I hope you all find as much joy playing this as I do because it's a great little list. I really highly recommend it. Alright, so for Skellige, this is the only list that isn't kind of my own creation. So this is a list that Wilson came up with, and it kind of looks weird to look at. It's the Meta Breaker list, and yeah, it takes a few games to wrap your head around really what's going on here because to look at it, you can't figure out what's going on. But really, what it's doing is utilizing a lot of very strong packages that are available to Skellige and just building a consistently good deck. And so this kind of comes from like you've got the thinning packages with like discard through like Bernabran and your Hime Scolds to get rid of things like your Morkvarg, put your Jitter in the graveyard, put the Skirmishers in the graveyard to come back out. You can get rid of a Crow Messenger because it'll just pull out of your graveyard if you end up bricking and you have Birth in hand. And then you have the option to Freya's Blessing with Crow Mother and 2 Crow Messengers in the graveyard, which plays for 12. And then you've got Geralt Quen into something like a Bear Witcher. So when it damages itself, it just hits the shield. So that plays as a 13-point play. And it just feels very consistent. There's no like central deck plan. It's just lots of very good cards that work together. And although it wasn't in the patch notes, Gerd has been fixed. His adrenaline works properly now. So I guess the deck kind of got a bit of a buff in the last patch in that Gerd actually works as intended now. So if anything, it's ever so slightly better. So I'll give this one a try. I enjoyed playing it and I didn't really get too much of a chance at the back end of last season to play it as much as I'd like. So probably going to be trying this one a little bit. I think it's pretty fun. Alright, so to round it out, this is the collusion list that I've been messing about with for quite some time. So this is basically lifelined pockets, but we're leaning more into the collusion aspect, not playing into just spam crimes, get a lot of points and win. What this patch has done is actually made this deck a hell of a lot better, and the main reason is Horson Jr. So before we weren't running any cut-ups, basically because we didn't have any good options for cut-ups to put in the list. So I just decided, okay, we'll just accept that we're never going to get a full value collusion. We just won't run a cut-ups for the sake of the cut-ups. and Hodgson Jr.'s been changed so that now he's not useless. So the reason for this is with diversion, he can damage any unit, not just a boosted unit. So now he's actually playable. He's not terrible. So that's really helped out. And we aren't running safecrackers, so safecrackers basically lost Intimidate. So what I decided to do was we just swap those out for bare knuckle brawlers, and functionally it's going to play for a few less points than old safecrackers would have done, because obviously it's not getting that immediate deploy. But for that provision change, I think I'd rather have the brawlers, because functionally it's going to play for more or less the same points as safecrackers will now, because safecrackers are getting all those points on deploy. Bare knuckle brawlers are going to get them as an engine, and for those extra provisions, I would much rather just run the engines. And that's allowed us to fit the horse in him, and even squeeze in a flying Redanian without really losing too much in terms of what we were running before. So in terms of how you want to play this list, you really need to think about the matchup. So if you're playing against something that isn't all that reactive, you're playing against something like a Vi or like an NR Witches, where they're really just developing their own stuff and leaving you to your own devices. What you're looking to do is get to a long round 3, and you want to use your passive flora and your collusion for just a million points. If you can get a full value collusion, off the top of my head, I think it's 23 points. And what that requires is you need a Fire Sworn, you're going to need a Blind Eyes, a Cut Ups, a Tide Clerks, and a Crown Splitters. And we have all of those available. Obviously, the Crown Splitters are everywhere. Jux is a Fire Sworn, Horson is a Cut Ups, and Sea Jackals are Tide Clerks. And then the Blind Eyes are going to naturally come from passive flora. So the flip side to that is if you're playing against a more interactive deck that's kind of going to ruin your day, you can't expect to really get a full value collusion, and instead you need to be using this as kind of a value card. So you can use it, I've used it in round 1 quite a few times, because if you develop, say, a Sea Jackal, a Street Urchins, and like a bare knuckle brawler, for example, it's already playing for some decent points. You get, I think you get something like 6 coins, and it will boost a unit by 5, and it's kind of enough. Obviously, you want that full value, but you can't always rely on it. So I think it's a very flexible deck, and I've found with the thinning you get with like Faircut and Novigradian Justice and all that kind of fun stuff, I've found that it's relatively consistent for a diversion list. So I think it's definitely worth giving this one a try, because I enjoy playing this one for sure. And that is it for us. Syndicate is always the last one. So as always, if you try out any of these lists or like the look of them, let me know. If they do well by you, I always like to hear that my creations are actually helping people out, so that'll be much appreciated. I will have a video out on Sunday. I'm not too sure what I'm going to use. I might use the NR list or maybe the Nilfgaard list. Nilfgaard list might be a bust, but we'll find out. So yeah, I hope this has helped, and I will catch you in the next one.